Jiaoqiu is the newest Nihility unit, seemingly designed specifically for Acheron, the self-annihilator emanator of the Nihility. From a lore perspective, he's just a healer from the Xianzhou Yaqing. But what if I told you his connection to the Nihility goes beyond merely gameplay, and could actually extend to his lore too? I've been looking very closely at Jiaoqiu, totally fascinated by his seemingly mundane concept. Local healer is a chef that eats spicy food to heal the ice inside his heart. It's simple. But actually, there's so many really suspicious details that hint at a much darker, bigger picture. And no, I don't just mean the fact that he's borderline a cannibal. Disclaimer before I begin, this video is largely theoretical, so it's very possible I've just lost my marbles and none of this means anything. I just enjoy speculating and overanalyzing every little detail, so take it all with a big grain of salt. With that in mind, let's get cooking. In Jiaoqiu's trailer, you probably noticed that the dining table was adorned with a series of decorative items related to the creatures throughout the Xianzhou associated with the dishes he's serving. During some of the scenes, you can see some Heliobi amongst the decorations too. It's a bit strange, but it kind of makes sense. After all, they have been associated with cooking before, including a time when some people believed that the progenitor of Heliobi, the Flint Emperor, might, among other things, ascend to become the Eon of grilling. Yeah, I'm serious. As it is, Heliobi themselves are connected to the Nihility. In fact, they are used as Nihility materials, and I believe the connection is that real black holes are formed from imploding stars, so it makes sense. There are multiple accounts of dying Heliobi turning into black holes. When the Flint Emperor was first defeated, it's recorded that the Suicide Squad sent a weaponized auxiliary weapon straight into the red star formed by the Heliobi, causing it to undergo early decay and implode into a black hole. Presumably, this process was replicated by a Bai Heng, who likely turned a powerful Heliobi into a black hole to defeat the abundance emanator Shuhu. Now, the Nihility conceptually is associated with the Chinese afterlife. That is why Acheron's name is not actually Acheron, but originally it is Yellow Spring in Chinese and Japanese, the name of this afterlife specifically. Acheron is just a localization with a similar meaning. I've explained this in more depth before, but the Ten Lords Commission is inspired by the 10 Courts of Hell, and these are all connected to a vague Eastern concept of an underground hell, usually with a river where souls go to cleanse their karma and prepare themselves for reincarnation. This might sound hard to believe at first, but from a deep lore perspective, it currently seems that both Lan the Hunt and Yaoshe are strongly connected to the Nihility. In Penacony, you might remember how Acheron told us that specifically Hunt followers become synthesters, smoky beings from the Nihility. This was the fate of Tiernan. This sort of thing has happened for much longer than the Hunt path has formally existed, in fact. In the wake of the Swarm disaster, following the war between the kingdom of Elidikna on the bug planet and the invading bounty hunters sent to hunt the bugs, all likely orchestrated by Aha, by the way, let's not forget the ominous laughter during the Fentilia fight. This is literally the eon of schemes and manipulation. The bounty hunters especially found themselves turned into synthesters who couldn't wash their hands of the blood of the slaughtered. It was a whole ordeal, and I've oversimplified it, but if this topic interests you, there's a series I made that breaks it all down. Around the end of the Swarm disaster, it seems that Yaoshe ascended. Understandable, because the devastated and near lifeless universe was desperately in need of this path. What's often overlooked is that it seems like Yaoshe specifically may have shown compassion for the Synthirsters, and I strongly suspect this is what is happening in the Solitary Healing Light Cone. There's also a poeticness to it. Yaoshe exists to heal the ruined Hunt followers, Lan exists to destroy the abundant Yaoshe, and on it goes. That's not confirmed, by the way, that's just my own theory based on what we know so far. Okay, now, put a pin in that thought about Yaoshe and Lan and the Nihility for a moment. I have to diverge onto a new topic briefly, but I promise we will come back to this and it will make sense. I have to pivot and talk about the Disciples of Sanctus Medicus. Yeah, the immortality-seeking Yaoshe-aligned faction aboard the Xianzhou. A long time ago, a Foxian Helmmaster of the Yaoqing encountered Shuhu and brought their teachings onto the Xianzhou. They established the Disciples of Sanctus Medicus as the first Master Primus, and this faction advanced the Xianzhou's medical knowledge a lot. They built apothecaries to help the poor, and eventually they became known as the Cold Spring Sect. They rediscovered some old Vidyadhara medical research and used it as a standard for their medicine, overhauling the entire Xianzhou medical systems in the process. There was also a branch of these old Disciples of Sanctus Medicus that focused on the research of yellow Noma Young essence, and that was believed to counter the black prana essence of death and decay. This is internal yinyang, and the core S seed within the Xianzhou immortals is the source of the immortality, basically forcing young life within their body until eventually it seems this seed blooms into the branches of the Mara struck. Eventually, with the outlawing of any Yaoshi worship, the old disciples of Sanctus Medicus was totally replaced by the Cold Spring sect that disassociated from Yaoshi, at least formally. 30 years ago, after the Abundance War, the medical genius Jiaoqiu created a new branch of the disciples of Sanctus Medicus that believed Mara to be a stepping stone to true immortality, and honestly, she was pretty close to being right. It's unclear if her Vidyadhara allies were part of the Cold Spring sect or independent researchers, but she and her allies created the miracle of the Bloomborn Scion, Bailu. And with that, we can come back to Jiaoqiu. His introduction states that he was born to a prestigious alchemy commission family. As previously said, the original disciples of Sanctus Medicus were indeed established by a Foxian from the Yaoqiu that personally encountered Shuhu and brought back the teachings of the abundance. In Jiaoqiu's trailer, we see a moment where he's posing with a fruit, and not just any fruit, but one of the peaches of the abundance. This is the fruit of immortality, and it's inspired by Xi Wenwu's immortality peaches in Chinese mythology. This is a heavy hint that he's seeking immortality, and with his family background, I think there's a high chance he may turn out to be a descendant of the first Master Primus of the disciples of Sanctus Medicus. Does this mean he's loyal to Shuhu Yaoshi? Not necessarily, but I do think he might be inclined towards some illegal research, if you know what I mean. Speaking of illegal research, when the new disciples of Sanctus Medicus and the Vidyadhara researchers created the Bloomborn Scion, it was done by smuggling branches of the arbor out of the depths of the Scale Gorge. Understandably, Kalorum Venti, the High Elder of the Yaoqiu, has been very interested in the development of Bailu and requested updates according to her maid. This could mean one of two things. Kalorum Venti wants to investigate Bailu's creation, and this could potentially be a goal of Jiaoqiu on the High Elder's behalf, or Kalorum Venti was involved in the creation of Bailu, which may also implicate Jiaoqiu as a lead medical practitioner of the Yaoqiu. Kalorum Venti bargained with the Ten Lords Commission to let Danfeng be reborn instead of outright murdered, and honestly at this point, I don't know if that makes him more or less likely to be involved with the forbidden research, considering that the lead researcher from the Lo Fu was deeply inspired by Danfeng. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Okay, that's one thing, but there's more. Jiaoqiu has 3 official goals. 1, he wants to cure General Fei Xiao of her moon rage affliction. 2, he wants to stop people from dying in wars after he heals them. 3, he wants Fei Xiao to cure his broken heart. To be honest, I don't have the answer to moon rage, but I want to get a bit theoretical with the other 2. Remember how I was talking about the dynamic between Lan and Yaoshi, and how the abundance may exist to cure synthirsters, which seems to be the nihilistic remnants of the hunt that are trapped, unable to move on or something. And remember how I brought up that the old disciples of Sanctus Medicus discovered the core S and tied it in with Yellow Norma Young life forces versus Black Prana death force? Basically, this means that the denizens of abundance, including long-lived species but not the Vidyadhara, maintain long lives by throwing their internal equilibrium out of order, disrupting their inner yin-yang by overwhelming their yin death force with the yang life force. The reason I don't include Vidyadhara is because they don't have the core S and are more associated with the quantum yin side with the magic ocean water and the Leviathan-esque aesthetics. I wonder if this makes them mechanically closer to synthirsters? I'm not sure, just wondering aloud. But theoretically, the quantum forces of the Leviathan-esque species is how they're able to neutralize the overwhelming yellow forces of the arbor. After all, this is a miniature version of the imaginary tree in the Sea of Quanta. Consider this also. The Heliobi are a Nihility force that were captured by the heroic general after the Flint Emperor imploded into a black hole and was subsequently stored within the Jiaoming furnace. Following this event, Yaoshi, presumably in their quest to cure the death of the Nihility, arrives on the Xianzhou and offers them the arbor and with it the fruits of the abundance. Following this, deep-sea creatures arrive on the Xianzhou and generously offer to help counter the effects of Ma, and oh yeah, they lay their eggs on the branches and gain total control of the arbor by sealing it off with magic seawater and surrounding it in a draconic castle. At the same time, the Vidyadhara use their architecture to establish a prison for the Yellow Spring-themed Ten Lords Commission, which is literally the same inspiration for Acheron and the Nihility. If you're not convinced, can I hit you with the irrefutable evidence that Heliobi, Ten Lords, Vidyadhara, and Ouroboros, a Leviathan, all strong connections to the lotus flower associated with the Buddhist afterlife, just like Blade's spider lily and the red flower they used for Acheron, because, I don't know, I guess they didn't want to use spider lily twice. Yeah, I really nailed it with that old Helio by Hearts video. Anyway, to go back in time to the first severing of the arbor, doesn't it make sense that the Nihility-themed Heliobi magic is able to damage the arbor when you consider the powerful forces of black versus yellow at play? Which also means that Lan themselves, if the folklore has any seed of truth to it, but honestly, even if it doesn't, likely uses this black prana power, and that means someone who is theoretically struck by Lan's arrow would have their inner yellow life essence, their internal yinyang, overwhelmed and destroyed, leaving behind mostly the cold, nihilistic black prana yin death essence. Obviously, this sort of overwhelming nihilistic attack would usually kill you, but what if it didn't? What if, say, a talented medical professional familiar with the inner workings of yin and yang was able to survive just barely, left with a displaced core, very chilly inside? No, this isn't about Yu Jingliu, even though, yeah, this explains her too. Having lost his sense of taste and wise enough to know that he must overwhelm his now freezing internal temperature with hot foods to maintain his own equilibrium. And no, I didn't just make this up. Traditional Chinese medicine involves assigning a temperature to different foods, and it's believed that these foods influence your internal temperature. Spicy food is, of course, considered a very hot and suitable cure for inner cold when trying to balance internal yin and yang. More specifically, spicy foods restore inner yang energy, which, of course, is the yellow norma yang essence associated with the core S seeds given by Yaoshi. So that kind of explains the why and how of Jiaoqiu's broken heart and unbalanced internal yin-yang essences. I suspect that this is the truth of Jiaoqiu's medical speciality. The emphasis on yin-yang in his kit is there for a reason, and I believe he could be the key to figuring out a cure to Synthirsters and Mara. I don't yet know how the Moon Rage stuff comes into the picture, but I think that plotline will be more about resolving the political tensions between the Foxians and their Borisin family. I mentioned already he's basically at least coded as a cannibal, right? Ultimately, Jiaoqiu's story is a continuation of the fallacy that has plagued the Xianzhou since their first encounter with the Flint Emperor. The Xianzhou citizens are much too quick to sacrifice themselves, and the death of Hunt followers seems to result in the creation of Synthirsters. And between that and Mara, they have a lot of biological alchemy issues. Jiaoqiu really emphasizes the tragedy of all the self-sacrifice, and that is literally the exact same thing that led Dongfeng and Yingxing towards the events of the sedition. This means Jiaoqiu is a prime candidate for a sedition 2.0 or something similar. I mean, Malza does look very associated with Synthirsters, just like Bladey and Jingliu. On that topic, my friend made a video about Jiaoqiu potentially being possessed by Phantilia, which I strongly recommend watching if you have the time. Okay, I've rambled enough for this video. Like, subscribe, donate, etc, etc. Bye bye!